Food prices are skyrocketing around the world. And if you listen to world leaders, they'll tell you it's due to climate change.
Climate change is the biggest threat for the human beings.
And their solution might surprise you.
There are 1,900 edible insect species on the planet.
The European Commission has officially declared mealworms to be food.
Yes, this is future of food.
The people in charge have determined that by switching our diet to crickets, ants, and mealworms, we'll be able to stop temperatures from rising, lower the price of food, and possibly to even save the planet.
It's never about innovation, it's always about getting rid of farmers.
Agenda 21 was meant to be the agenda for the 21st century. Some of the goals sound nice, ending hunger. Who could possibly be against ending hunger? It requires total power from the state.
I think it's a scam. A lot of this came about in the early 70s, the Clean Water Act, Clean Air Act, which were good things, but it's been abused from what the original intent is.
No, maybe not
there's
this
not
one.
a farm anymore. No, there's also not a farm anymore.
So all these people shut down because of the government policies?
Yeah.
I'm the 6th generation of farmer.
Yeah, I'm the 4th generation.
How many years have they owned this plot of land?
40 years.
I think we're the last generation.
They're shutting down the small and middle-sized family-run farms.
We either own property or we are property.
I don't think we can trust the government anymore because they want the land.
And our founding fathers understood that the land would be distributed among the people so they could always control their government.
Right now, things have tripled as far as costs. I think you're going to see across the board higher food prices.
Has anybody been held accountable for screwing up? No.
As every communist tyrant of the last 100 years has understood, if you control the food, you control the people.
Everything is falling apart. There is a shortage of food.
We're heading for a world food crisis, as we hear all the time.
Do you see any hope for the situation?
Yeah, we have to continue fighting for it. No farmers, no food. They will know it.
Welcome everyone, I'm Chris from the Epoch Times. I'm here in Dallas, Texas for the Stop 30 by 30 Summit, and we're here at the red carpet premiere of No Farmers, No Food, Will You Eat the Bugs? We're going to go behind the scenes and talk to all the different people who made this film possible. We're going to talk about how this groundbreaking documentary was pieced together, and we're also going to do some interviews of the people involved. Now, if you subscribe to the Epoch Times, you'll be able to watch No Farmers, No Food, Will You Eat the Bugs on September 25th at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. If you're not yet a subscriber, go ahead and scan this QR code right here, click the link, and you'll be able to access No Farmers, No Food by subscribing to the Epoch Times. No Farmers, No Food, Will You Eat the Bugs is the first documentary to explore how the UN's 2030 agenda is putting farmers out of business and how these global green policies are disrupting the food supply. We're also investigating how the global green solution is to eat the bugs. This is a topic that's being ignored by the world's media. We went around the world to investigate how this is taking shape and how the next global food crisis is coming about. So Commissioner, thank you so much for being here for the screening. And I want to ask you, will you eat the bugs?
No, I'm not going to eat bugs. I'm out. I'm kind of a ribeye, medium rare guy.
So why is that?
Well, I mean, that's you know, God created us as carnivores, and we're supposed to eat meat. Our eyes in the front of our head. So we're hunters and gatherers. So I'm going to stick with the traditional meat.
So a lot of changes have been going on. A lot of things are hurting farmers right now. In the documentary, we explore multiple facets of the issue, whether it's land grabs or alternatives to beef, like we just talked about. Why do you think this is going on, and why do you think people should watch this documentary to find out more?
Well, I think it's a globalist agenda. It's happening in Europe. They're much further along than we are. Just look what went on in the Netherlands, where they made the farmers quit using nitrogen fertilizer, nationalized half their land, told them to get rid of half their livestock. They've done the same thing in Ireland. It could happen here. We're well on our way, but people need to wake up and stop this Biden 30 by 30 agenda, and that's to idle 30% of our land before the year 2030. That's only phase one. Phase two is 50-50. If you idle 30% of our land, that's larger than the Louisiana Purchase by several million acres. So it's a sizable block of land. What that means is, of course, as the Agriculture Commission, that means has a huge effect on agricultural production, but it also affects oil production, gas production, mining, timber, and the list goes on and on. And it affects construction and expansion and high-speed rail and pipelines and transmission lines and all of the above. So it has a huge effect. I think this is as dangerous as our open southern border, and people just need to wake up to it and latch on to it. We've got to stop. We've got to mobilize and stop this.
So what would you say to somebody on the fence about watching the documentary?
I said, you need to see it, you need to share it, you need to take your family and friends out to see it. No farmers, no food. And it's really a global agenda. They want to reduce world population so they can control the population. And the way you do that is controlling the amount of food.
So why do you think the Epoch Times chose this topic specifically?
Oh, a very wise organization. They care about the future of the human race.
So I'm here with Margaret, and she actually invited us to come to present our film. Why did you invite the Epoch Times to release No Farmers, No Food here?
Well, first off, because it's so important you guys are covering this information, and we're just really excited that this is something that you guys have dug into. It's such a story, and most people don't even know that this is happening across the country and across the world. And so, I mean, we were very excited that a news outlet like yours would take a deep dive into this issue. So it was a very easy invitation for us to ask you guys to be a part of this. We're very pleased you're here.
Why don't you tell our viewers a little bit about Stop 30 by 30 Summit?
So the 30 by 30 agenda is an international agenda that President Biden initiated in America in 6 days after he took office. But it's an international agenda. So in the Netherlands, you know it as Natura 2000. It's an agenda that's been implemented internationally and just in 2021 began getting its foothold here in America with President Biden. So this is a plan to permanently protect 30% of the world's land and ocean by 2030. It's a massive taking. It's a massive taking of land internationally. And it's not about conservation, it's about control. Because if they control the land, they control our food, as you have certainly found out in the documentary as you did this. And if they can control our land and food, they control the people. And that is something that, as an American, is offensive. Because we were established with the understanding that the individual had individual rights and the ability to own their own property. And so this 30 by 30 agenda is an assault on Americans.
So what about the people who are sitting behind the scenes and they see this documentary, they see the title, they see No Farmers, No Food, Will You Eat the Bugs? I mean, there probably a lot of things are going through their head, right? I'm wondering, what can you say to people after watching the film that motivates them to take a look at it, even if they're not farmers? We're talking about regular consumers. Why is this important to them?
Well, number one, because it directly affects what people are going to be able to eat. And we take that in America as a luxury because our food system has been so good. It's based on capitalism and private property rights. And so there's no federal or collectivist control of what we can and can't do with our food. When that's taken away and we are given limited choices where now we can only eat meat on some days, as is already occurring in some cities, or they're trying to push it in some cities, and we're going to be forced to eat bugs. That's a personal decision. Nobody has the right to tell somebody what they can and can't eat. That's a personal decision. And so this is not a political issue. It's a personal issue that everybody needs to get interested in and help us retain the freedoms of Americans to make these choices.
It's my pleasure to be here. It's such an important topic, and we've got to make sure that we have the right people talking about it and get the word out.
Have you seen the film yet?
Yes, I have.
And what do you think about it?
I thought it was awesome. Very well done, very professionally done, but it should strike a little bit of fear in everybody's heart on what's going on in the world.
Why do you think that is?
Well, because number one, we know the world population is going to double over, they say, by 2050. And if you just look what happens with Sri Lanka, as in the film, where their food production just drastically dropped, how are we going to feed the world if this continues? As we talk about more of the green energy, and that's taking farmland, and then you have this of the taking of farmland, there's a lot of pressures on agriculture right now, and we've got to make sure that we are able to feed the world.
I got a very important question for you, Commissioner. You ready for it?
I'm ready.
Will you eat the bugs?
Probably not. I'm going to stay with my steak.
And why is that?
A calorie is a calorie. It's going to take something to produce those bugs anyway, and we don't know what those bugs excrete. Nobody's really been doing those type of testings and whatnot, but there's goes into's and comes out of in anything that grows and anything that we eat. I'm used to those nice steaks, lamb chops, pork chops. I think I'm going to stick with the good old American red meat.
So what are you going to go back home and tell your constituents about this film?
I'm going to ask them to watch it. I'm going to actually post it and ask them to take a good hard look at it and actually sit down and pay attention to what the message is.
So we're here with Roman from Facts Matter. How you doing, Roman?
I'm doing well, thank you.
So is this the first documentary you've made?
Yeah, this actually is the first full-length documentary.
So I'm sure people are used to your show, Facts Matter. It's kind of short, straight to the point, just the facts. What's the difference between preparing for that show and then going ahead and making this big feature documentary?
To be honest, it's like night and day. Because usually with my program, I pick one topic and I kind of understand the contours of the topic, and then I try to explain it to myself and then explain it to the audience. So typically I can get an episode out every day. That's how I operate. But with this, it was just, we had a topic in mind, like just a general topic: food, farmers, government, how Agenda 2030 is getting implemented into different countries around the world. And then we just flew out and spoke with farmers in this country, spoke with any government officials willing to speak with us, flew to this country, spoke with farmers, drove around, saw the situation. And then we came back to the office, and my producer and I were looking at our files, and we're like, 4 terabytes, huh? 4 terabytes of interviews, and she said it's actually 12 terabytes, not 4. And so we're looking at this, and it's like, it's like a sinking feeling. But then we just started to transcribe them, figure out how what one person said connects to what the other person said, and eventually we were able to kind of create a map of how Agenda 2030 gets implemented into different countries, and then furthermore how that is affecting the actual farmers on the ground. So daunting, but it allowed me and our team to really understand what's happening, which I think is great, and we were able to pass that on through the documentary.
So why this topic? Why eat the bugs? Why the land grab? I'm sure people are used to you with the infographic commercials and all the other stuff. What motivated you to take this thing on as your documentary?
So, as a reporter, I'm always looking for an interesting news story, right? And so back in 2022, you had the Ukraine-Russia war was already, being waged. And at that time, you had politicians around the world already talking about possible food crises, possible food shortages coming on the horizon because of that, the problem with the fertilizer and the wheat exports. And I'm like, okay, well, that makes sense. And then we saw farmer protests spring up in Holland, other countries in Europe, other protests spring up in Oceania, in New Zealand, in India, in North America, up in Canada. And so I assumed when I saw that it had something to do with this macroeconomic situation, that they're just maybe upset about the prices or fertilizer or something. But then I looked into it, and I'm like, actually, they're protesting their own government, putting onerous restrictions on them, which is forcing them off the land. And I'm like, really? Like at this time when there's already kind of this macro problem, this is what their own government is doing? And so I spoke to my editor, and I'm like, this seems interesting, can we investigate? And so he sent us to the Netherlands initially, and we just started talking at that thread, speaking with as many people as possible, and we kind of stumbled into this global agenda that's manifesting in countries around the world. And then you asked about the bugs part. So we didn't actually anticipate the bugs initially, but then as we were doing it, as we were conducting these interviews, we began to hear murmurings of farmers who, because they can't farm anymore, they're moving to insect farming. And so it's like, that's like shocking, right? And so that's how we began to tug at that thread. But in the end, it all comes together, right? If you want to save the planet and you get rid of the farmers in order to do that, well, people still need to eat protein, and the rise of the bug. So that's sort of how it all wound up fitting together.
Sure. And our last question here, I'm wondering, for people who are on the fence, they see the topic, it's something about farmers, it's something about bugs, eating them, a little strange. Why should people on the fence take a look at this film? What's beyond the title?
So that's a good question, because if you look at it and you're not a farmer, you might be like, well, okay, it has nothing really to do with me, especially people living in America. I feel like we're such an insulated society from the problems of the outside world that you go to the store, there's food almost always. Very, very rarely do you go in the supermarket store, shelves are empty. During COVID it happened, but even that was a short period of time. So I feel like generally people in America feel like this kind of period of prosperity will just last well into the future, especially young people, who don't have any memory of going back to the 70s or even definitely the 30s. But what we were able to sort of expose is that if this continues going down the road it's going, you had the Great Leap Forward in China, right? And that was late 1940s, early 1950s. And prior to it actually, well, in the early stages of the Great Leap Forward, and prior to it actually, taking the lives of 50 million people, a lot of people supported it. It's the Great Leap Forward. It's in the name, right? Do you support you don't support the Great Leap Forward? What are you, not patriotic? And and it made sense on paper. Like China's gonna leapfrog into the industrial age. We're gonna catch up to. Well, they're gonna catch up to the United States and Europe in steel production and industrial capacity, and that was the idea. But it wound up, like looking back now with hindsight, the Great Leap Forward is synonymous with a famine that killed 50 million people. And so I think what I want to avoid is a situation where Agenda 2030, it sounds really good on paper. We're going to save the water, we're going to save the air, we're going to restore the soil. But I want to avoid a situation where 100 years from now we look back and go, man, that was rough. Agenda 2030 was a famine that killed 1 billion people. Right? And I think the documentary sort of equips people with the knowledge and the language to kind of look at what's happening and know the questions to ask and know the nuances behind what's being said so that they can poke holes in the narrative. And I think that's important.
I think it's giving people a choice now to stop what's about to happen. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mark, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you very much.
You're known as a skeptic. I have to ask you this question. Why shouldn't people be skeptical about watching this film?
There's nothing to be skeptical about because the movie walks you through the claims, the human impact, and their actual goals, and it reveals to you what they're trying to do. And this is nothing about saving our food supply or saving planet Earth. This is about top-down central planning control pretty much of every aspect of our lives, but chiefly going directly at our food supply. This film unravels and exposes the great food reset right before our eyes, from Sri Lanka all the way over here to the United States and globally, and how they're going about collapsing and restricting our food supply to make us essentially ration food to soften us up for eating lab-grown meat and, of course, insects.
Now I got to ask you, because you obviously have no experience in this film, a documentary about Agenda 2030. How do you think our film compares to, other things out there right now?
I think your film, what's so unique about it is the human element. There's a lot of time spent crafting interviews of people being affected by these net zero policies, by the sustainable development agenda, by the 2030 movement. And you get to see how it impacts them in real life, what it means for real people. It's not just a newscast or just something about some 1.5 temperature target and we're going to meet it because we're doing this to Netherlands farms or U.S. farms. It gives you human faces, you feel for it, and it gives you the science, it gives you the actual bureaucracy and the facts without resorting to anonymous sources, secret documents. This film shows you that it's all out in the open. All you have to do is listen to what the players of the Great Reset are planning, because they'll very easily tell you, and as the film shows, they expose their agenda, and we get to see how it impacts real people, and more importantly, we get to see how they're fighting back.
My name's Lauren Patterson. I am the current president of the New Mexico Cattle Growers Association. Our organization was established in 1914. We're one of the oldest associations in the state of New Mexico, and we've protected New Mexico agriculture since that very beginning.
So speaking about protecting agriculture, what do you think about this film? We're seeing a lot of things happening. We're seeing land grabs. We're seeing farmers being forced not to grow certain things, not to produce certain things, cattle. How does this film affect farmers?
Oh, I think it's a great documentary. It's really showing the pressures we're seeing on a global scale on animal agriculture in particular, with the thought that climate change is all due to us. Well, it's not. We know that. We know it's for fact that we can prove that methane or nitrogen and all those things are not affecting the climate to the extent people think. One of the great things about this film, it's very unbiased. You guys just present the facts. And I think Americans, I think the world are looking for unbiased facts. And that's what you guys provide, and I appreciate that.
My name is Craig Rucker. I serve as the president of the Committee for a Constructive Tomorrow in Washington, D.C.
And you were actually featured in the documentary. What role did you play?
Well, I am a person who is the president of CFAC, having been to a lot of UN conferences around the world and being able to share my experiences about the attacks on the farmers, attacks on agriculture, and attacks on our energy sources from the Green Movement. So given that sort of background, I played that sort of role.
And why do you think it is that the new agenda, especially when it comes to food, is that we should transition our protein intake to bugs?
Yeah, great question. I think that the green movement has for a lot of years been just in general antagonistic towards agricultural production. The big boogeyman is climate change, and they feel that the flatulence and the burping of cows basically is creating a climate apocalypse. So from their point of view, if they can do things at a lower emission level, they feel that this is something that they can somehow save the earth, which is ridiculous because that is not, the earth is not imperiled from a climate apocalypse. And leave alone the fact that the people who are actually banking on this, the Bill Gates and other people who are generating fake meat and that, see in this whole climate apocalypse a lot of money to be made. So that's why we think that this is going on. You have twofold. Those who are true believers want to get rid of meat, and then those who want to cash in on this and make money on the substitutes for meat.
So why should people who are on the fence go and take a look at this film?
Well, I think it's eye-opening. You're going to need to be able to see what it is that this cabal is doing to try and attack our agriculture, our living standards, our food, a whole industry, which is, the thing that we need to be able to prop up our whole economy. I mean, without agriculture, without food, you have no clothing, you have nothing to eat. It's a horrible existence. And we have whole portions of the world in Africa and other places that have issues with this, and we see the results of that. So this attack is something that I think impacts everybody, and so they should be watching this movie.
So when you heard that the Epoch Times was making this film, what was the first thing that came through your mind?
Fantastic. I think the Epoch Times is a great publication. You produce great material, and I myself subscribe to it. So I would encourage everybody to get a copy of not just this movie, but become a subscriber to the Epoch Times.
My name is Eric Schumacher. I'm the researcher and scriptwriter for the show Facts Matter.
So Facts Matter is a short-form show. So I'm wondering, what were the challenges that you see going from writing a show like this to moving into a film? What do you think for a scriptwriter? What do you think? What's the difference here?
Obviously, the form is a lot longer with the documentary. You have a lot more leeway to get more facts in, and that's obviously the hardest part about Facts Matter. You have a certain window between 5 to 20 minutes, depending on the topic, to kind of cram as much information in as you can. Plus, you got to keep in mind the attention span of the audience seems to be dwindling every day, so you got to try to get as much in as you can. With the documentary format, you have a lot more leeway to get more information out and tell a more complete story.
So what was the big takeaway? What was the big takeaway you took from this film?
There was a couple of them. I think the first one would be that top-down governance hardly ever works. It just seems like every time it's tried, it always ends in disaster. We also learned a lot about, and especially with the COVID reaction, how the supply chains are very frail. Personally, what I took a lot away from this was just the value of growing your own food and the ability to be self-sufficient, how important that is. Everything and throughout my research and through the COVID response and the supply chain disruptions, it kind of got me concerned about my own security, my own family, so I started developing my own garden, and wouldn't you know it, it's like my new passion. I got the greenest thumb you've ever seen. I took over my entire backyard, and I grow all my own crops now, and it's really therapeutic, it's really good for you, and it makes you have an increased appreciation for where your food comes from and what goes into it.
So actually, this film might turn every American into a farmer. That's what you're telling me right now, right?
It could help. The Victory Gardens, there was a lot of talk about them in the height of COVID. I don't think they're a bad idea. I think it's a good idea for everybody to at least dabble with it, grow a couple things in your backyard if you can, and you'll be amazed at what happens from it.
Why do you think the Epoch Times selected this topic, no farmers, no food, will you eat the bugs? What was behind this?
I know for me personally, I was interested because I always heard about, you hear a lot about the Great Reset, and this Bond villain, Klaus Schwab, and this guy can't be the real deal. Like, what's up with this? So, you do your research, you look into it, and you start to see, well, this isn't just a wild off-the-wall concept. You start to see that what they're actually promoting is being implemented in countries across the world, and you can see the detrimental effects that it's having.
In the documentary?
Absolutely, yep. Sri Lanka is the prime example. And it also shows the sad, unfortunate nature of our agricultural industry, which seems to be so almost like drug dependent on pharmacological inputs in terms of fertilizers and chemical pesticides. And
So what would you say to someone on the fence that sees the documentary title, maybe looks a little bit into the preview? Why should they give it the click?
I think you should give it a try. I have a little bit of a hot take here. I mean, I did a lot of the research into it. We have a lot of episodes coming out that delve into the history of entomophagy, which is the eating of bugs, and where it came from, where it's likely going, and a lot of the science and research that goes into it. I'm not personally against the idea or concept of having markets come up. If the free market says there's people out there who want to eat bugs, by all means, go at it. It's probably just the same as like whey protein. You know, you don't eat it because it tastes good. You eat it because it provides you some protein. I do have an issue with them telling you that you will eat it, though. When you take away the option, I think that's where everybody has a problem. And unfortunately, that's where it seems like this is going. So I think watching this video, this documentary, will put a nice spotlight on that.
Hi, Chris. I'm Debbie Bachgalupi, and I'm a rancher from Northern California. Like true Northern, just below the Oregon border. Not like Sacramento, but...
So you're featured in No Farmers, No Food, Will You Eat the Bugs? You know, when you first got the call, when you were first notified that we wanted you to be in this film, what came to mind?
Well, first of all, Agenda 21. It's an area of specialty in which I've been researching for, since I worked for Google in 2007 and 2008. And just how these global agendas started with the United Nations have been brought to the United States by our own local elected officials. And local, I mean, Nancy Pelosi is not far from me. And as Speaker of the House back in 1992, she introduced a bill called H-Con Res 353, and she talks on the Hill about, I was going to say the date, October 2nd, 1992. It's a Friday, and she is talking about urging Congress to adopt the United Nations Agenda 21 Sustainable Development. And so when I got the call, it was for me an opportunity to share about how the people we elect to represent us, to represent our God-given rights, to represent our private property rights, have for all these years been using United Nations ideology to harm the people that they have been elected to represent and safeguard by taking an oath to the United States Constitution or the California Constitution that they will protect our rights. So when I got the call, I was like, this is a great opportunity by Epoch Times, because I think you guys are fabulous, to share to the world what's happening. And it's not good news.
So what do you say to people who are on the fence? Now you've seen the documentary, you've
Yes.
been in the documentary.
Right.
People who haven't seen, been in, they just see a title. What would you like to tell them about why they should watch this film?
Well, first of all, it's based in fact. It's based on boots on the ground people who are actually experiencing the heavy-handedness of government. Like, the government should be on our back, or not on our back, but on our side. And so I just want people to know that this is not a conspiracy, because the film starts off right away with showing Nancy Pelosi on Capitol Hill trying to pass UN Agenda 21 Sustainable Development. And I speak all over the country about Agenda 21. I have been for quite many, many years, thousands and thousands of people I've talked to. And mostly where you go and talk about Agenda 21, they want to say, oh, cuckoo, conspiracy. So I love that the documentary, I love that this film starts off with exposing Nancy Pelosi, like her or not, but exposing what she did very early on in her career, which was try to urge Congress, not just in 1992, she did it 6 months later in 1993, trying to create a bill that would push these United Nations Agenda 21 land policies all across the United States, in every area of the United States. So I hope that people watch this film with an open mind. We haven't been told the truth. We have been, in my opinion, deceived. And I also believe that much important information has been kept from the American people so that an agenda this large for the 21st century could be implemented, not secretly, because you look at, you could look at legislation all throughout the United States and see hints of sustainable development everywhere. So it hasn't been in secret, but it hasn't been, out in the open and forthright. And I think that's a shame that some of our leaders in Washington, D.C. have been part of this, this agenda, for lack of a better word.
I think it's a lot more scary as well. They're doing it right before your eyes.
They are.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on, Debbie.
Thank you.
So now that the film has been released, and we're at the red carpet event, so you're here, what motivated you to travel? How long was the trip?
We traveled all
15 hours.
15 hours, but it's very important for us, for the farmers. Farmers feed the world. That's our main goal, and we want to do it together. And that's good. What you do is good, and we want to help everyone to get the world know that farmers feed the world.
I think a lot of people are going to be humbled that a group of farmers from the Netherlands are coming here to the United States to talk about a problem that is facing the whole world.
Yes.
I mean, it's not just in the Netherlands. It's coming here, and it seems like you've actually come here to warn America of how bad things can get.
The documentary says exactly what's happening in Holland, and started at that moment in America. America lives qua nature and all the things that we have in Holland 20 years back. 20 years ago, we farm in the same way as America farm now. But all the government rules we have in Holland, if it's going 10 years further from this, there is no farming more in Holland. So America must be aware of what's happening now in Holland is going to take over the whole world.
It's grim.
Yes.
So is there a light at the end of the tunnel?
Always, yes, always. The light is when the farmers doing his job. We can feed the people. There's no war for food. We had one job, and it's making food.
How do you think the documentary helps you in that mission?
Oh, that's a good question. I hope a lot of people they see it, and because it's a true story. It's the story from our hearts.
More farmers are getting away. How expensive food is going to cost. And the first thing we need 3 times a day is food. If we stop, all farmers stop in the world for 2 weeks working, the problem is solved because everything is going. You don't have food anymore, so then it's done. And that's realize people don't realize that is the truth.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you so much.
Yes.
And I'm going to enjoy seeing you in the film again shortly.
Yes. Thank you.
I thought it was an excellent film. After graduate school, I went and I worked for agriculture company, Monsanto, which is now Bayer. And then I went to law school, and then after that, I ended up working for an all-natural agriculture company. So having my family, my grandfather was a farmer, and then having an education and working in the field of agriculture, it's been something that's been dear to me and near to me. So it was explosive to see how we have transitioned to using science to find ways to make things more productive so people can eat, to now doing a 180 to figure out ways to have people not eat food versus people eating bugs, which is a little shocking in some place I don't even want to think about. Or
would you ever eat bugs?
No. I prefer meat and I prefer plants, not really bugs. Yeah.
That's fair. I'm wondering, what would you say to somebody to motivate them to watch the film?
I'd say we all have to eat, so it's helpful to know where your food comes from, the food supply, and if we don't have that, what do we have? So it's a educational film, I would say, and to get people to watch it, why not have a better understanding of where your food comes from? There's a lot of movies that are out there that are on the side of agriculture, but it's more on the negative side of, cow farts are going to destroy our way of life, so we need to get rid of those industries. So people need to be able to see something that presents both sides, and people to make up their own decision instead of just having one side of a story and then that's all that they would support.
So what did you think of the documentary?
I think it's a great way to get the message out to the public. We need to figure out ways, and we talked about some of those tonight, about getting it in front of a lot more people than the audience we had tonight. This was to me, a captive audience, if you will. We have a common goal for the meetings we're at here. We need to reach those people that are sitting on the fence, if you will, or don't know where where their food's coming from. That's to me the real issue in the thing is getting people to understand that it doesn't come in a box, it doesn't come in a plastic jug, it doesn't come in a piece of cellophane. Yeah, it's actually produced out in the country somewhere.
I'm a fan of Roman. I watch Facts Matters, and I think he does a great job of presenting things factually. And he covered this globally, Sri Lanka, Netherlands, U.S., and on a variety of matters. It was just very, very informative.
So why should people watch the film?
Well, it's fixing to bite them. If not them, then their children. This is a very serious matter. I'm thinking one fellow had an idea. He said, why don't we get this film and go to a small theater and ask them to show the film and bring your friends to it? So that's an idea that I'm going to try to do. Maybe, I'm not sure where, but I'm going to look into doing that.
It is a fabulous film to educate people. So there were many things that I learned in there that I did not know. What's going on in the world is headed our way. And we have water issues. We're cattle raisers. I also raise horses. We're having water issues right this minute in Texas. We're having to drill down deeper to get to water. For the first time since 2011, we've had to buy hay, which is not a very good thing to have to do because hay is at a premium right now. My granddaddy would die if he knew what prices we were paying for hay right this minute. So we had a tough summer, but we've got a problem in our state, in our country, with our land and our land rights and our water rights and so many things. And what we just saw today adds on to what's happening in the world. And so we need to do something about it. So Agricultural Commissioner Sid Miller, let me just tell you what. He is our ag commissioner here in Texas, but he has over 1 million followers on social media. He is a person that can get the word out, and it was perfect for him to be up there on the dais today.
And what would you say to somebody to motivate them to watch the film?
Well, even if you're not a landowner or a property owner, but you care about what you eat every day, I think that you need to pay attention to what is going on in federal America, what they're trying to do. I've already even seen on the label of like Bluebell ice cream that there's some kind of genetically modified ingredient in the ice cream. That's Bluebell. That's a Texas ice cream. That should not be happening in our midst. That should be a choice. We should be identifying what's going on there. I'm not going to eat crickets right now. Before I died, I might eat a cricket or a locust. The Bible does talk about eating those things, but I'm a beef eater. We're beef raisers. John the Baptist survived on locusts. I'm a beekeeper. I love honey. And almost anything tastes good with honey. Have you ever eaten a locust with honey? It's a little crunchy.
No, but it is biblical, right?
It's in there. It is in there. But something tells me that the locusts of those days might be different of the locusts today.
I think so.
Today we have chemicals, and they have, the exoskeletal shell, and I would eat one before I died, but I'm going to stick to the beef.
I thought it was awesome. It really does bring to light a lot of what the globalists are trying to accomplish in America as far as confiscating our land. Their strategy is basically to manipulate and then control, then dominate, and then eliminate. And you can see it play out very well in the film.
So why do you think somebody should watch No Farmers, No Food?
Well, most people are not even aware that this initiative is going on. So I think it would do them a lot of good to see what's happening and bring up the awareness of it.
And what about somebody who's on the fence? What would you say to motivate them to go check it out?
I can't imagine anybody being on the fence once they see it. Once they see it.
We're talking before they get there.
Well, they have nothing to lose. If they're on the fence, then they just need to be educated. And once they're educated, they won't be on the fence any longer.
Well, I'm not a person who takes in a lot of documentaries, but this one I thought was really well done. It told a really good story, a really shocking story. It kept my interest the entire time.
What would you say to somebody who is on the fence about watching the film?
I think if they were on the fence, just invest an hour. They probably waste an hour doing other things throughout the day, so maybe they could learn something, get a new perspective.
And let's say you're talking to somebody at work or in your family. What would you tell them about the film?
I would tell them that this is something that there's enough parallels that Roman is able to bring to light, that there's probably something to it, and just give themselves that perspective so they can take in some facts and make an informed decision.
I loved it. I love the fact, that it's going on offense. All agriculture does is play defense. We play defense in the legislature, we play defense in the media, trying to defend what agriculture does, and that is feed Americans. And, why are we having to defend that? We should be going on offense, and that's what I loved about this film. It goes on offense to basically pull back the veil and expose the nefarious agenda that is at play in many different facets to destroy our farmers and ranchers, which is in essence destroying ownership of private property and ushering in communism, quite honestly.
So why should somebody see this film?
Oh, if you eat, you're involved in agriculture. Everybody eats, so everybody they're invested in knowing what is behind, when you see shortages in the grocery store, it's about policy. It's about legislation. Everybody needs to wake up and get involved with their representatives at the local, state, and federal level so that we can cherish our farmers and ranchers and get engaged in a more direct manner to where it really will make an impact. We need the citizenry. It's our responsibility. It's our civil duty to get involved in the legislative process, and thereby being informed. This movie is great at informing people as to some of the issues at hand. It's really not about climate change. It's really not about some of the things that they're saying that it's about. But when the shelves are empty, we live in a culture of abundance here in America. We're spoiled. And, you go to other countries and, they don't have the varieties and the abundance of produce and meat and other things. And one of these days, people are going to wake up and find that it's just not there, or it's changed, or it's sparse. And they'll ask why. Well, let's not wait that long. Let's get involved today and cherish our farmers and ranchers. We're going to lose it. We're going to lose our food supply, and it's a matter of national security. This is an urgent message, and I like that too about the film. It's an urgent message to get out there to people that if you don't engage in the process, it'll be gone.
Go watch No Farmers, No Food.
Just watch a phenomenal film, No Farmers, No Food. Go and watch it.
Go watch No Farmers, No Food, because that's really where it's at.
America, please go watch No Farmers, No Food. It will wake you up. It will help you understand what is headed our way.
Go watch No Farmers, No Food.
Go watch No Farmers, No Food.
Go watch No Farmers, No Food.
Go watch No Farmers, No Food. You're going to love it.
This is a phenomenal film which is premiering on September 25th on Epic TV at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. If you're not yet a subscriber, scan the QR code over here and watch it yourself when it comes out. Up next, here's a preview.
In 2021, the European Union's Natura 2000 network released a map of areas in the Netherlands that are now protected against nitrogen emissions. any Dutch farmer who operates their farm within 5 kilometers of a Natura 2000 protected area would now need to severely curtail their nitrogen output, which in turn would limit their production.
The nitrogen problem is something they made up. It's one big lie. The nitrogen has nothing to do with environmental. It's just getting rid of the farmers.
Do you guys drink the raw milk?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You think raw milk is fine?
Did you see my son? Yeah. Oh, I gave him raw milk.
What's happening to the farmers here locally? Are a lot of them selling shop?
No, at the moment you can't even sell it because because of the regulations. The properties are kind of worthless. Another farmer can't buy our land because he's not allowed to be a farmer there as well. So if you can't sell your property, then it's worthless. And I think the government can take it just without buying it. They don't even have to buy it. They just take it.
And like, what do you think they would do with it? Do you think they would develop it into apartments or?
Yeah, they say they need a lot of land for building houses. We have so many immigrants coming over here at the moment, and they say, yeah, we need houses for them, so that's why we need your land. It looks like they want to make Holland one big city.
One problem I see is that in the countryside, a lot of upside-down Dutch flags, a lot of the red handkerchiefs flying, you know, in solidarity with the farmers. But when you go into the big cities, we talk to people, young people don't even know what's going on.
No.
So it might be that like only when the store shelves are empty,
Yeah.
they finally realize like, oh, what's going on?
Exactly. But
Right?
then it's too late.
Then it's too late.
Yeah. Yeah, but it is happening.
I've always said that the nitrogen crisis is, first of all, a made-up crisis. It's manufactured. And the only solution that is ever being proposed is forced expropriation. So it is the government that will take hold of their land.
What do you think some of the reasons are for the government trying to take the land from the farmers?
We have a housing crisis in the Netherlands. As you know, this is a very tiny country. We have a lot of people, and we have a growing population because of immigration. And we need places to house those immigrants, and I think that that's partly why the government wants that land. They need houses, and they need to build houses, which is funny because apparently building houses is also what emits nitrogen, but that's not the people they're coming after. They're coming specifically after the farmers because they want the land. So that is the ultimate goal.
What Eva is saying makes a lot of sense. As the world gets more populated, land obviously becomes more valuable, and thus he who has the land has the power. In America, government support for Agenda 2030 is strong, but this country was founded by farmers, and land ownership is the key ingredient which protects the American people from government rule.
Today, the European Commission has officially declared mealworms to be food. It could be a game changer for insect farmers. They're now hoping to grow their businesses and turn insects into another source of protein for Europeans, even if just a niche one.
There's this top-down globalist idea that certain Western countries have diets that they do not approve of. In other words, they're more meat-based, and they feel that humans don't need meat-based protein. And they want to either force people to follow their paradigms, or they want to buy or accumulate farmland, and that's how they're going to farm it. It's sort of like the Soviet Union or Mao's Cultural Revolution. It's top-down, and it results in disasters.
The UN Food and Agriculture Organization in 2013, they put out this very bizarre report, and they said we need Westerners to start eating bugs, right? And that wasn't on anybody's radar. We didn't eat bugs, that's disgusting. And so they said we need a massive propaganda campaign in the media to convince them that they're going to save the planet. Well, we're seeing that. NPR, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, the BBC, even Fox News, right? They've been peddling this idea that bugs are delicious and nutritious. Now you got all these celebrities eating bugs and teaching people that it's trendy and cool to eat bugs. And as we speak, they are right now building the largest insect protein processing facility on the planet outside Decatur, Illinois. They're building another one up in Canada. They know there's not really demand for bugs right now, right? How many Americans do you know that are clamoring for cricket sandwiches, right? practically none. And so I expect that as these food shortages develop, as the price of staples goes through the roof, people will say, okay, I'm really hungry, my kids are really hungry, I can't afford a steak anymore, so all right, I'll eat your stupid crickets.